Before restoration, there is always disintegration. That's the first truth most people refuse to face. We all want renewal, but we don't want the collapse that comes before it. Yet, that collapse is not an accident. It's the necessary precondition for rebirth. When your world falls apart, when the structures you trusted dissolve, when the familiar disappears, that's not the end of your story. That's the moment before a new creation. It's the same pattern written into the very fabric of existence. Chaos first, then order, darkness, then light, the void, and then life spoken into it. You see, in the beginning of everything, God moved over chaos, not over perfection. That movement wasn't random. It was intention in motion. That's what He does with us too. When things break down, when you lose direction, when it feels like the foundations of your life are shaking, that's often the moment when God begins to move again. The collapse exposes what was weak, what was false, what was never meant to last. The disintegration is not your destruction, it's your diagnosis. It's the revelation that something has to change. But most people resist this. They cling to the wreckage of what once was and call it safety. They keep holding on to broken patterns, broken relationships, broken beliefs, because they fear the uncertainty that comes with chaos. Yet there's a brutal truth here. Refusing to face chaos keeps you from restoration. You can't rebuild what you won't let fall apart. Sometimes God allows the structures of your life to crumble because He knows you've built them on sand. And until they fall, you won't seek the rock beneath. It's not pleasant. Chaos never is. It's terrifying to admit that the map you used to navigate life no longer works. But there's something sacred in that realization. It means you're standing at the threshold of something new. A chance to rebuild with truth, not illusion. This is why many people never enter their season of restoration. They mistake disintegration for abandonment. They think God has gone silent when, in reality, He's clearing the ground. The truth is, you can't step into a new season carrying the debris of the old one. You have to let go of what was to make space for what will be. That's the price of transformation. It's not about erasing your past. It's about reinterpreting it. Every loss, every failure, every heartbreak, they become raw materials for your restoration. But that only happens when you face the chaos honestly. When you stop pretending everything's fine and acknowledge that parts of your life need to be rebuilt. That's the moment when movement begins, when the Spirit starts to hover again over your emptiness, ready to speak light into it. The pattern never changes before God restores. He reveals before He reveals. He shakes, and before He shakes, He loves. Because to love something truly is to refuse to let it stay broken. That's what divine restoration really is. Love expressed through renewal. It means God won't leave you in disarray, but He will not restore what you insist on hiding in the dark. So, if your life feels like it's unraveling, don't rush to escape it. Don't try to patch the cracks too quickly. Stand still for a moment and listen. Ask what's being revealed through the ruin. The disintegration is not punishment, It's preparation. It's the tearing down of false stability so that something eternal can be built in its place. And when you understand that, when you stop fighting the chaos and begin to learn from it, you become ready for restoration. That's when the season begins to shift. God doesn't move over perfection. He moves over potential. The chaos in your life is not a curse. It's an invitation to let go, to trust, and to begin again. When you accept that, you'll realize the collapse wasn't the end. It was the first movement of a new creation. And it means your season of restoration has already begun, not in spite of the chaos, but because of it. God doesn't restore what's static. He restores what's willing to move. Movement itself is sacred. It's a declaration of faith. When you take a step, even a trembling one, you announce to the universe that you refuse to remain buried in despair. Restoration doesn't meet you where you sit still. It meets you where you rise. That's how God works. He moves through movement. The moment you decide to act, however small the action, something begins to shift in the unseen. People often wait for a sign before they move, but the sign comes after the step. The miracle is not in the waiting, it's in the walking. You remember the story. The waters didn't part until the feet touched them. That's the principle of divine motion. Faith is proved not by what you believe silently, but by what you do despite the uncertainty. God honors forward motion because it mirrors His own nature, creative, dynamic, alive. Stagnation, on the other hand, is death disguised as comfort. It feels safe, but it slowly drains the spirit of hope. When you begin to move again, to rebuild, to forgive, to plan, to dream. Even in weakness, you activate restoration. You give God something to bless. He cannot steer a motionless vessel, but if you start to move, even without seeing the whole path, the direction becomes clearer. Each step reveals the next. That's how faith operates. Revelation through obedience, clarity through courage, and sometimes movement isn't grand or visible. Sometimes it's internal. It's the quiet decision to stop complaining and start creating. It's choosing to get up one more time when you've fallen 100 times before. It's daring to speak truth into your confusion, to take responsibility where once you blamed. That's movement too. And heaven recognizes it. You can't be restored while remaining in the same posture that broke you. You must shift in thought, in heart, in direction. The moment you do, you align yourself with divine motion. That's when God begins to meet you halfway, to breathe life into your effort. Restoration flows toward movement like rivers toward the sea. So move, however uncertain, however small, because when you do, heaven moves with you. And that's how the season of restoration truly begins to manifest. Taking responsibility is how you partner with God in the work of restoration. Restoration is not a passive experience. It's an act of co-creation. It's the moment when you stop waiting for life to fix itself and decide to stand in the rubble, pick up what remains, and begin to rebuild. Many people pray for restoration but refuse to accept the weight that comes with it. They want the blessing without the burden, the crown without the cross. But restoration always begins with responsibility. The decision to say, this is my life and I will not abandon it. Responsibility doesn't mean you caused every broken thing. It means you're willing to respond to it. That's the root of the word. Responsibility, the ability to respond. And when you respond instead of complain, you align yourself with divine order. God restores those who are ready to engage with their own story, not escape it. You may not be to blame for everything that fell apart, but you are responsible for what happens next. That's how dignity is rebuilt, through conscious engagement with the mess, not avoidance of it. It's easy to blame others, to say that life, people, or even God have been unfair. But blame is a thief. It robs you of power. The moment you place responsibility outside yourself, you also place your restoration there in someone else's hands. And then you wait powerless, bitter, and still. But when you take responsibility, something powerful happens. The world around you begins to respond. Creation itself seems to notice the one who has decided to rise. Because responsibility is not just a moral act, it's a spiritual signal, a declaration that you are willing to be part of what God is doing. When you stand up and take ownership of your path, even when it hurts, you imitate something divine. You mirror the same truth written into the story of creation. God brought order from chaos by acting, by speaking, by taking responsibility for existence itself. That's what it means to bear His image, not merely to believe in Him, but to live as He does, to act with intention, with courage, and with integrity, even when circumstances are broken. That's how you participate in the movement of God. Responsibility also demands discipline. It's not a moment of enthusiasm, it's a pattern of action. You don't rebuild a life overnight. You do it through consistent, deliberate steps. When you wake up and decide to do what is right, even when it's inconvenient, you declare that your past no longer has dominion over your future. Restoration begins to take shape in the small, ordinary acts. The decision to forgive, to work diligently, to tell the truth, to show up when you don't feel like it. Each of these choices becomes a brick in the foundation of your renewal. And yes, responsibility can feel heavy, but that weight is sacred. It's the proof that your life has meaning. The things that weigh on you are often the very things that give your life substance. Carrying them is not punishment, it's participation. You are being trusted with the work of rebuilding what was broken. That's a divine privilege, not a curse. When you take responsibility, you stop being a victim of circumstance and become an architect of destiny. You begin to see that God is not distant, waiting for perfection. He is near, waiting for participation. He moves through your willingness to carry what is yours. And that's the paradox of restoration. When you accept the weight of responsibility, it becomes lighter because you are no longer carrying it alone. God begins to move with you, to strengthen your hands, to multiply your effort. So, stand up and take responsibility for your thoughts, your actions, your choices, your future. The moment you do, You join God in the creative act of restoration. And that's where renewal becomes real, not in waiting for rescue, in walking with purpose. Responsibility is the bridge between chaos and order, between loss and restoration, between despair and destiny. And when you cross it, you discover that God was never far from you. He was waiting for you to rise. Your pain is not punishment, it's preparation, it's the soil from which renewal grows. We often misunderstand suffering, assuming that it's a sign that God has turned away from us. But in truth, suffering is the place where God does His deepest work. Nothing of real value is built without struggle. The seed must be buried before it can bloom. The ore must be refined before it becomes gold. And the heart must be broken before it can be whole again. Pain, in its mysterious way, refines us. It strips away illusions. It tests our strength. And it calls us to confront who we truly are beneath all our defenses. When everything is comfortable, nothing changes. We become complacent, distracted, asleep to purpose. But suffering shakes us awake. It reminds us that we are not in control, that life is fragile, that meaning is not found in ease, but in endurance. The discomfort that feels unbearable is often the birthplace of wisdom. That's why restoration always passes through pain, because without pain, we remain the same. Pain forces you to examine what you believe, to question what you've built your life upon. It exposes false foundations. When everything is stripped away, you're left face to face with truth, and that truth, though it hurts, is the beginning of restoration. God never wastes pain. He transforms it. What feels like loss becomes instruction. What feels like punishment becomes purification. What feels like an ending becomes the beginning of something that could never have existed without the breaking. Suffering is the furnace where your faith is tested, not to destroy it, but to strengthen it. It's easy to speak about trust when everything is working in your favor. But when life falls apart and you still choose to trust, that's when your faith becomes real. That's when it grows roots deep enough to survive any storm. And those who have walked through fire carry something sacred, a quiet strength, a wisdom that can't be learned from books, and a compassion that only pain can teach. Here's the paradox. You don't need to understand your pain for it to work its purpose. You only need to endure it faithfully. There will be seasons when the questions have no answers, when the silence feels unbearable. Yet even then, something is happening beneath the surface. The soil is breaking, the seed is pushing upward, and life is preparing to emerge. It's invisible, but it's real. Restoration often begins in secret. The world tells you to avoid pain, to numb it, to escape it. If you run from pain, you also run from growth. The only way out is through. You have to let the process do its work. You have to let yourself feel what needs to be felt. The grief, the anger, the loss, and trust that it's leading somewhere higher. Pain can be a teacher if you listen closely. It will show you what truly matters, what truly lasts, and who you truly are. And eventually, the day comes when you look back and realize that the pain you thought would destroy you actually built you. It forged in you a strength that comfort never could. It carved out a deeper capacity for love, humility, and understanding. That's the mystery of divine restoration. God uses what hurt you to heal you. So don't despise your suffering. Don't curse the process. Let it refine you. Let it do its work. Every tear, every trial, every breaking has purpose woven through it. You may not see it now, but God is moving even in the pain. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. And when the preparation is complete, when the soil of your soul has been softened by struggle, that's when new life begins to rise. That's when restoration comes, not in spite of your suffering, but through it. You cannot be restored if you don't see clearly. Restoration begins with vision, with the courage to look at your life honestly and speak truth into it. Many people want renewal, but they refuse to face reality. They cover their wounds with distraction, hide behind excuses, and call denial peace. But there can be no restoration without truth. You cannot rebuild what you will not see. You cannot heal what you will not name. The act of seeing clearly is the first miracle in the process of transformation. When God restores, He begins by revealing. He shines light into the dark corners, not to shame you, but to show you what needs to be repaired. That's the divine order. Illumination before restoration. You must see the truth about who you've become, the choices that shaped you, the patterns that bound you. It's painful. Truth always is, but it's also freeing. Because once you see, you can no longer be held hostage by lies. You begin to move with purpose, no longer stumbling in confusion. Vision gives direction. Without it, people perish, not because they lack strength, but because they lack sight. You can endure almost anything if you understand where you're going. But if you live without vision, you wander, building and breaking the same walls over and over again. Vision demands that you look beyond what is and imagine what could be. To see your life not as a collection of failures, but as unfinished potential. That's what restoration requires, the ability to see what's broken and still believe it can be rebuilt. But vision alone is not enough. It must be anchored in truth. There's a difference between dreaming and deceiving yourself. Many people live in fantasies, confusing comfort with calling. They imagine restoration without change, victory without battle. But truth cuts through illusion. It tells you that restoration will cost you comfort, pride, complacency. It demands that you confront your own part in the chaos. And though that confrontation is painful, it's also sacred, because in facing truth, you align yourself with God's nature, and God is truth. To speak truth about your life is an act of faith. It's declaring, this is where I am, but it is not where I will stay. Honesty doesn't trap you in your condition, it opens the door to transformation. Lies, even comforting ones, keep you stagnant. But truth, though it burns, sets you free. It clears the fog of confusion and reveals the next step forward. You don't need to see the whole path. You only need to see clearly enough to take the first step. And clarity comes when you invite God into your perception. Ask Him to show you what's real, not what you wish were real. Because sometimes what you think is restoration is actually avoidance in disguise. You must be willing to let go of illusions, even the ones that make you feel safe. That's how spiritual sight sharpens, through surrender. When you begin to live truthfully, your world starts to realign. The people, the opportunities, the peace you lost begin to find their way back, because restoration thrives in an atmosphere of truth. Lies repel blessing, truth attracts it. God cannot bless the false version of you that you present to the world. He can only bless the real one. So open your eyes and see. See what's broken, see what's possible, and see that God is still moving. Vision and truth are the twin foundations of restoration. One shows you the future, the other keeps you grounded in reality. When you hold both, you become unshakable. You no longer drift between hope and denial. You walk steadily toward renewal. That's when your season of restoration takes shape, not in fantasy, but in truth illuminated by vision. Is moving, yes, but through you. Restoration is not something that happens to you, it's something that happens through you. It's divine motion expressed through human effort. We often imagine that God's movement is distant, something external that we passively wait for. But in truth, God's movement begins the moment we decide to act in faith. When you take a step forward, when you choose to rebuild, forgive, or start again, that's not merely your will in motion. That's God moving through you. He doesn't work apart from you. He works with you, in you, and often as you. Faith in motion is what turns divine intention into human experience. You can pray for restoration all day long. If you never move, you've misunderstood how faith operates. Faith without movement is like light without heat. It exists in theory, but not in power. The moment you begin to move, no matter how uncertain the path, you demonstrate trust. Trust becomes a signal to heaven. It says, I believe enough to act. And that's when restoration starts to unfold. God blesses movement, not idleness. When you act in faith, something profound happens. The natural begins to align with the supernatural. Your effort, no matter how small, creates an opening for divine energy to flow. It's not about perfection, it's about participation. God never asked you to carry the whole burden of renewal on your own. He simply asked you to move, to do what you can, and let Him do what you cannot. You bring your loaves and fishes, He multiplies them. You take a step into the unknown, He parts the sea. That's the mystery of divine partnership, human effort met by divine power. And that's why movement is sacred. Every time you refuse to give up, every time you choose faith over fear, you are aligning yourself with the very rhythm of creation itself. God is always moving forward, never backward, never stagnant. So when you move in faith, you harmonize with His nature. You become a living expression of divine momentum. Even your smallest act of courage becomes an echo of His creative energy in the world. There will always be voices that tell you to wait, to play it safe, to hold back until conditions are perfect. But there's no such thing as a perfect moment. The conditions will never fully align. The path will never be completely clear. The perfect moment is the one you choose to move. Because once you take that first step, the way begins to open. Movement itself creates clarity. God guides those who walk, not those who stand still. Restoration is a journey, not an event. It's a daily decision to keep moving, even when progress feels invisible. Some days it will look like a great leap forward. Other days it will feel like crawling through the dark. Every inch of movement counts. Each moment of perseverance tells heaven that you're still in agreement with God's purpose for your life. And when you remain in motion, grace meets you in unexpected places. Strength rises when you least expect it. Doors open that you couldn't have forced open yourself. That's the divine rhythm. Effort met by favor. Obedience met by breakthrough. You are not waiting for God to move. God is waiting for you to move so He can move through you. The river of restoration is already flowing. You just have to step into it. When you do, you'll discover that the power you've been praying for has been within reach all along. Because God's movement is not distant, it's alive within you, breathing through your courage, manifesting through your action. So move in faith, in truth, in hope. Move even if you're afraid. Move even if you're unsure. Because every act of movement declares that you still believe in God's power to restore. And when you move, heaven moves with you. That's when restoration stops being a promise and becomes your living reality. God's motion revealed through your steps.